here if you want.
Yeah, I might drown.
You won't drown.
Oh, you won't drown.
Try to get over there.
You're not gonna drown. I promise you won't drown.
There you go.
Thank you.
What's your name?
Hey.
What's your name?
My name is Marquise. But everybody calls me LeVar because I go to the Denellen.
Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was okay getting over here. And they think I'm about to swim back. I can't even swim.
Doing a good job right now.
Probably not more than this.
The investigation around Nolan Wells' mysterious death continues to heat up, and this time the FBI is now stepping in to look into what happened. As you can recall, Wells was enjoying a remote island off the coast of Mississippi for the 4th of July, when he would be reported missing close to 11 p.m. Now, suspicions would grow because the friends he traveled to the island with, known as Horn Island, would allege that Nolan decided to stay back to talk to a girl. That would be one of the first indications for Nolan's father, Elmore, that something was off.
I preach that same thing to my kids. If you go somewhere with someone, you come back with them, no matter what. Don't let a girl separate you from your safety net. It's plenty of girls. So for them to come back and that'd be the first thing that come out their mouth, like when they said that, they automatically just turned it turned me off, but it turned on a question like, I know he wouldn't do that.
Not only did it seem unusual that Nolan would leave his group, but the fact that he didn't keep his phone with him if he voluntarily stayed has been the biggest red flag for many. Nolan's body would later be found washed ashore 2 days later after a search and rescue mission was conducted. Now, at the center of his passing lies a racial aspect that many can't ignore, given that Nolan was the only black teen amongst white teens on his boat, and that the incident would take place in Mississippi. According to stats platform Statista, Mississippi is known for having the most lynchings in any state in America, with 93% of those lynchings being black people. It is because of Mississippi's history, and for some present day, that local officials handling the case can't be fully trusted. Now, on Tuesday, a new update from the sheriff over the Jackson County Sheriff's Department, Sheriff Ledbetter, would speak with reporters to share an update. According to Ledbetter, he and his team are not going to be pressured to rush their investigation, but will reveal that the FBI and other agencies have now stepped in.
We put out a call to action last week for that information, and it has been very productive for us.
Ledbetter did confirm that interviews have been conducted with witnesses, and the department has been in contact with other departments and agencies, including the FBI.
Rumors are out there, but we don't respond to rumors, we respond to facts.
From research, it is said that majority of Horn Island is federally owned, which could be a reason as why the FBI is now getting involved, as the agency specializes in crimes occurring on federal property like military bases or national parks, or can even get involved at the request of local officials. And for some, their involvement now appears to mean foul play has not been completely ruled out. Now, despite Ledbetter assuring that his team is doing a thorough investigation as to what happened to Wells, it appears that Wells' family is still not trusting the local authorities fully, especially after recently admitting in an interview with the Griot on Monday that the sheriff's department has not made contact with them since last Tuesday, in which their attorney, Benjamin Crump, would comment was a little odd.
So I'm going to be honest, we have not heard from our local authorities since last Tuesday. We received a phone call, basically really no updates, and that was it. We've heard from no one else.
Now, another issue that some have had with the local authorities' steps in the case was Ledbetter first sharing that he did not suspect any foul play. The announcing of this before an autopsy was even complete troubled many following the case, adding to their fears that a cover-up may be in the works. Now, other concerns for many is that the autopsy done by local officials have yet to still be released. According to local outlet WLOX, results from it are expected to come within several weeks, with a toxicology report being done by outside laboratories. And because of this, that timeline makes many uncomfortable as they realize how crucial every moment is. Now, it is also noted by the local coroner's office and from a second-hand report by a member of the Cajun Navy who helped with Nolan's search, his body did not appear to have any signs of physical injury. There were no immediate signs of physical injury, Jackson County Coroner Bruce Lind told CNN. Now, it's been 10 days since Nolan's tragedy would first take place, and questions still remain to what happened and were his friends involved. As reported here on Monday, discrepancies have emerged between accounts given by the friends who traveled to the island with Nolan about when they last saw him. The friends say they last saw Wells at 3 p.m., but that looks to conflict with 2 other accounts. Other witnesses have documented that Wells was still alive and with others as late as 4 p.m. And in an alleged screenshot by one of the young men's mother, initially told someone in a Facebook DM that the group last saw Nolan around 5 p.m. when they were trying to get him to board the boat so they could leave. Now, looking at all this, these inconsistencies have led some to speculate that the friends' 3 p.m. timeline is meant to place their last contact with Wells before the point at which others can independently confirm he was still alive. If their claim of leaving the island at 4:30 p.m. is accurate, it would mean the group spent up to an hour on the island after last seeing Wells when he would let them know that he wanted to stay. So does it seem believable that Wells would determine he wanted to stay when they last saw him at 3 p.m. and they would leave at 4:30 p.m. without ever contacting him again? Or does it make more sense that the last time they saw him and when they left happened at once, as first expressed by one of the teens' moms, that Wells stalled their departure because he was talking to a girl, which for some who believe in a version of a drowning theory, in which at some point Wells would drown swimming far out trying to catch up to the boat. In this theory, the drowning could have happened towards the boat or when he realized he needed to head back to shore, and that his friends would continue taking off, not fully knowing if Wells got back to the island.
I'll just wait.
Bro, you have a life jacket.
No, I'm black. It doesn't matter. It's not gonna say.
Bro, yes it does.
Bro, I'll just find a way. Hey. Yeah, they think I'm about to go back, but I can't swim.
Bro, you have a life jacket.
I'm gonna die.
I'm standing right
Hold
now.
on.
So I can just like hold on in the back of the head.
Put your handle right here if you want.
Yeah, I might drown.
You won't drown.
Oh, you won't
I'm gonna try
drown.
to get over there.
You're not gonna drown. I promise you won't drown.
There you go.
Thank you.
What's your name?
Hey,
What's your
Oh,
name?
my name is Marquise. But everybody calls me LeVar because I go to the Denellen.
are you okay? Are you okay?
Ma'am.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was okay getting over here. And they think I'm about to swim back. I can't even swim.
Doing a good job right now.
Probably not holding on this.
2 things happened in this case this week, and neither one has gotten the attention it deserves yet.
And it's my first time here.
It's your
Oh, first time? Well, welcome.
Yeah.
How'd you get over here?
Yeah, what
They made me
happened?
take that way over there, and they had 2 life jackets on.
I'm glad we ran into you.
You fucking pussy.
I'm never coming back with y'all.
Yo, we told you if you were coming, we had a life jacket.
A life jacket.
Float.
Saving it for a big kid. This for a little kid.
That's scary though if you're not used to water.
Yeah.
I just swim in my pool in my backyard.
Yeah. Spring water's different.
It's a lot different, you know.
We're almost there. Ooh, we're in. I know, it's really strong. And there's a current. You're welcome.
Taking it second by second.
Day by day.
Second by second and day by day, which we all can understand. And I just want to ask you, the friends that Nolan traveled to Horn Island with, they say that he stayed behind voluntarily. Why would he stay behind?
That we cannot answer. I can't fathom why he would. Like,
I don't know why he would. We always taught him to, if you go with a group, you stay with a group. Even when he was in college, he would say, Dad, well, we're gonna ride down to a party or something in another city. Now, so I was out telling him, look, if you go with 5, you come back with 5. Do not separate from your group. Because I always said safety is in numbers. And he always said, yes, sir. So he knew to stay with his group. So why would he split from his group? I don't know.
So that would have been unusual for him to split from the group. And you said he would always check in with you. Did he check in with you that day?
so that day, no, I don't. But of course, too, they were on the boat, and usually when he is out there, which it's not uncommon, he's I think since last year he's been going there occasionally with his friends, and so it would always just be like, hey Mom, I'm back type of thing. But this time there was no call or text from him, it was from his friend.
And then too, really didn't worry a lot about it because it was his last weekend to have fun because that Monday he had to report to school. We was preparing to take him back for camp to prepare for the season. So, we understand he wanted to have his last little hurrah before he locked down and get ready for the season. Because, like I said, the entire summer he's training. He got more serious. He started to understand what I was trying to tell him about football, not just being fun, but as you get farther in it, it becomes a business. If you want to excel, you have to understand, and you have to understand both at the same time.
And we know, Ben, that you said that you're going to do an independent investigation.
Yes.
And you say you have Nolan's cell phone and messages were deleted. How could you tell messages were deleted?
Well, his parents got the phone back, and that's something that's important, Michael, because they tracked this phone on Life 360.
So Life 360, but when I received the phone call from Warren, I immediately called my friend Tashima and I said, hey, have you guys seen Nolan? Because her two sons, Jalen and Javon, they grew up together. They played City League sports together. When they got into school, they played sports together. And so she was like, hey, okay, the boys were pulling up the location from Snapchat. So the Snapchat location looks completely different than the Life 360 location. So when I pulled up Life 360, it was different. It was showing everywhere the phone had been. I was like, well, it's showing that he's back on land. I'm not. He's like, but no, he didn't come back with us.
Well, how were you able to get the phone?
So we tracked it, and my friend Tashima went and picked it up.
It wasn't like they said we got his phone. They tracked it, and that highlights all these contradictions, Michael. The fact that they said Nolan was talking to a young woman, and she said that he said, I'm going back to get on the boat with the boys. The boys said that he said he was going to stay with her. And so that's an obvious contradiction. And then this video of this, you can hear an argument going where Nolan is saying, give me my freaking phone. What are you freaking doing? And so then his phone ends up missing. I don't know any teenagers, Michael Strahan, who says, if you believe their story, I'm gonna stay behind and I'm gonna leave my phone. I mean, no young person leaves their cell phone. And so then there's so many things their parents were telling us about, even why didn't his body wash up with the tide on Sunday? Why would it come on Monday? It's not adding up. And that is the problem when you think about the history of Mississippi.
Yeah, so there's so many questions that need to be answered. And is there anything you'd like people to know about Nolan? What would you like them to know about your son?
No,
it's okay.
Nolan, take your time. Nolan was very loving. He was liked by all. It was not a friend that he couldn't make.
No, we'll be right back with more for the parents of Nolan Wells and attorney Ben Crump. We're back now on GMA with the parents of Nolan Wells, Christina and Elmore Wansley. And I want you to please continue to tell us what you want the world to know about your son.
So Nolan was just like this bright light, right? Walk into a room, his smile, his energy was just so infectious. It's almost like he drew you into him. And he was just one of those people, he always wanted everyone to be included. He didn't want anyone to feel left out. I remember one of his teachers emailing us. I can't remember what grade he was in, but basically it was math class. They had a special needs student, and she asked a question, and Nolan got everyone to put their hands down because he wanted that student to answer. And so student answers the question, and she was like, Christine, the classroom, Nolan went crazy, and everyone else started going crazy, just celebrating that child. Making them feel included. And that was the person he was. He loved everyone. And I always told Nolan, you have to be careful when you have such a big heart like that. I love that God blessed you with that, but you have to be careful with that. Because, that it's not always returned, that type of love. But he was just genuinely a good person. I always say, all the best parts of me are with him.
And Dad, anything else you want to add?
It's just, he's gonna be really missed. I know a lot of his teammates, they all looked at him as a leader. He's more like a silent leader. Not real big on words, more action, which is kind of like I was. I really wasn't real big on talking. I really wanted to show you and you follow me, and people followed him. And it's gravitated. He put in the work, he worked hard, and he knew he was focused on what he wanted. And he wanted to make life better for, his family. He wanted to have his own family. He used to say, Dad, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. I said, well, son, you got to take it one step at a time. Slow down, let's go, let's walk this thing out. Let's train, let's sign our deals, let's make these teams, make these camps, put the work in, and everything else will work out. Even his baby brother, their bond got even stronger, because now I have a big brother that he's finna do something, so now I want to outdo that. So his focus and his confidence has got even better. So I was looking forward to both of them having outstanding years.
Seasons,
He seemed like he inspired in the home, and he inspired outside of the home. And Attorney Crump, where do we go from here? What's next?
Well, the deleted messages that Christina was going to briefly touch on, we want to get the phone and figure that out.
Backtrack on that. When we finally got his phone, me and my sister went through the phone. We went in his Snapchat. He had 2 accounts, absolutely nothing. It wasn't even 24 hours, which is how long videos and pictures stay in Snapchat. And I was just like, that can't be. Like, I've seen Nolan whenever he snaps, like when he goes and he's having fun, like he does videos. Like, there was absolutely nothing, no saved videos. And even my sister was like, yeah, that's suspicious,
Michael, we having an independent autopsy done at the behest of his family. Colin Kaepernick helped pay for the independent autopsy. We flew his body up from Mississippi to D.C. because they wanted an autopsy done by a person with no interaction with the Mississippi law enforcement, because there's an issue of trust here that is really important. And the fact that they keep trying to say, suggesting it was a drowning, but nobody out there reported him drowning, it's not adding up, Michael Strahan. It is not adding up.
And honestly, we are doing this because at the end of the day, I would hope any parent would fight for their kids to find out if anything happened, what did happen. So we just want honesty and transparency. We want a thorough investigation. We want that same respect that would be given to anybody else, and that's it. We just want answers.
Well, we really appreciate all of you being here. We hope you get the answers that you deserve to have, and we hope you get
The FBI is now involved, and the young woman at the center of the single biggest contradiction in this entire timeline, the one whose account either confirms or breaks apart the story Nolan's friends have been telling, has finally had her side put on the record, not by a reporter, not under oath, but by her own family, in her own words, relayed through the people closest to her. We're going to walk through both of those developments carefully today, not the theories, not the speculation flooding the comment sections of every video about this case. What's actually confirmed, what's still just circulating, and where the line between those two things sits right now. Before we go further, if you've been following this case with us, you already know why that distinction matters more here than almost anywhere else. If this is your first time with us, you're about to understand exactly why. Subscribe now, because we're covering this case update by update, only when there's something real to report, and you won't want to miss where this goes next. Let's start with the sheriff. Jackson County Sheriff John Ledbetter gave a public update recently, and buried inside it were two details that hadn't been part of the official record before. First, his department has been conducting formal witness interviews and has been in direct contact with outside agencies, including the FBI. Second, he said tips from the public have genuinely moved this investigation forward. His office had specifically asked people to come forward, and in his words, the response over the past week had been productive. He was also direct about where things stand more broadly. This investigation, he said, is active. It is ongoing. That might sound like a small thing to say. It isn't, because this is the same sheriff whose earlier public comments, specifically the phrase, "no foul play was suspected," drew significant criticism and confusion from the public and from Nolan's own family. This new update reads differently. It's more measured, more procedural. And notably, it avoids repeating any language that could be read as prematurely closing off possibilities. Whether that shift in tone reflects an actual change in approach, or just a lesson learned from how badly the earlier wording landed, that's not something we can know from the outside. But the language itself has clearly changed. And in a case like this, language is often the only signal the public gets. Now, before this gets overstated, and it already has been in a lot of places online, it's worth being precise about what's actually been confirmed here. Ledbetter said his office has been in contact with the FBI. That is real. That is meaningful, but it is not the same thing as the FBI taking over this case. It is not the same thing as a formal federal investigation being opened. Local and state investigations bring in federal agencies for a range of reasons: forensic resources, jurisdictional questions, digital evidence recovery. Without that meaning the case has fully transferred to federal hands. What it does suggest is that Jackson County's own investigation has expanded well beyond what a small local sheriff's office typically handles alone. And when you combine that with an independent autopsy being conducted separately in Washington, D.C., and public questions raised earlier about whether the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation should take the case over entirely, what you have is a case now being examined from multiple directions at once. Not just one office, not just one theory. It's worth understanding generally why a local sheriff's office would reach out to the FBI in a case like this, even without a formal takeover. Federal agencies often bring specialized digital forensics capabilities that smaller departments simply don't have in-house, which matters enormously here, given the ongoing questions about deleted phone content we'll get to shortly. They can also assist with cross-jurisdictional coordination, which is useful in a case where witnesses, family members, and now two separate autopsy teams are spread across multiple states. None of that confirms a specific federal role in this case yet, but it does mean the contact itself is a plausible, fairly ordinary response to a case that has become logistically and forensically complicated, not necessarily a sign that federal civil rights investigators have opened their own separate inquiry. A CNN law enforcement analyst, a former police chief in both Philadelphia and Washington, D.C., offered some useful context on what this stage of an investigation typically looks like. He said it's important to interview each of Nolan's friends individually, one at a time, along with anyone who was on the beach that day and the young woman Nolan was reportedly talking to before he disappeared. The reason for interviewing people separately, rather than together, is straightforward. It's the only reliable way to check whether everyone's account of the same day actually holds together or starts to diverge once people aren't in the room reinforcing each other's version of events. He made a broader point too, one worth sitting with. Nothing about the pace of this investigation, in his professional experience, is actually unusual, aside from the intense public speculation surrounding it. Gathering complete evidence and conducting proper interviews in a case like this commonly takes a week or longer. That doesn't make the wait easier for a grieving family, but it does mean the timeline itself isn't, on its own, evidence of anything being mishandled. There's a reason investigators insist on individual interviews rather than group conversations, and it's worth spelling out clearly. When people are interviewed together, or even just aware of what others in their group have already said, their own account can shift, consciously or not, to align with the group's version. Separating witnesses removes that pressure. It lets investigators compare independent accounts of the same afternoon, looking specifically for the places where those accounts naturally overlap, versus the places where they start to pull apart. In a case built almost entirely on competing accounts of who said what to whom, that kind of careful, individual interviewing process isn't just standard procedure. Right now, it's arguably the single most important tool investigators actually have, more so than physical evidence, given how much of this case still hinges on memory and conversation rather than forensics. It's also worth pausing on why that distinction matters so much to the public watching from the outside. Most cases people follow online eventually offer something concrete to hold on to: a weapon, a location, a piece of forensic evidence that either fits a theory or doesn't. This case, so far, hasn't given anyone that. What it's given people instead is a stack of overlapping, sometimes contradictory human memories of a single afternoon. That's a much harder thing to build certainty around, and it's part of why the online conversation about this case has moved so far ahead of what investigators have actually been able to confirm. People want a fact to stand on. Right now, the closest thing to a fact anyone has is, here is what several different people remember, and those memories don't yet line up. Now here's the second major thread in this update. And this one goes straight to the most important contradiction in the entire case. For weeks, this story has hinged on a single disputed conversation. According to attorney Ben Crump, the young woman Nolan was speaking with told him she was heading back to the boat to rejoin his friends. The friends say the opposite, that Nolan told them he wanted to stay behind with her. That young woman's name is Katie. Her mother, Gracie McCormack, has since confirmed publicly that Katie was indeed the person with Nolan that day. I want to be precise here because it matters. Katie herself has not given a direct, on-record interview to any outlet we're aware of. What we have instead is her account, relayed secondhand through her sister and her mother. According to a Facebook post from Katie's sister, Nolan's friends were pressuring him to end his conversation with Katie so he could ride back with them. Katie had a conversation with Nolan, and based on that conversation, assumed he was getting ready to get on the boat he'd originally arrived on. Katie herself made it home safely that day on a separate boat with different people, according to the post, picked up by her sister's brother and sister-in-law. The post also states that Katie assumed the friends telling Nolan to get on the boat wouldn't have actually left him behind, and it says the family has already given, in their words, all the answers they can give, both to Nolan's mother directly and to authorities. It's worth walking through the emotional logic embedded in that account, because it actually helps explain how a situation like this could unfold without anyone necessarily intending harm. If Katie genuinely believed, in that moment, that Nolan was heading toward the boat, she'd have had no reason to think anything was wrong. She wasn't watching to confirm he actually got on. She simply assumed it, the way anyone would after a brief conversation ends and the person you were talking to turns and walks in a particular direction. That assumption, reasonable as it may have been in the moment, is exactly the kind of small human gap that can end up mattering enormously afterward, when everyone involved is trying to reconstruct exactly what happened, based on assumptions rather than confirmed observations.
What are you freaking doing?
Katie's mother, Gracie McCormack, added her own statement separately, also on Facebook. She confirmed Katie was the young woman with Nolan that day. She said Katie has remained in contact with the Wells family since. But she was also clear about the limits of what her daughter actually knows. Katie, according to her mother, has no real insight into what happened to Nolan after the two of them parted ways. That last point matters. Katie's account, even filtered through her family, doesn't claim to know what happened to Nolan afterward. It only speaks to what she believed was happening in the moment she last saw him, that he was heading toward the boat. It's also worth noting how Katie's mother chose to frame her statement overall. She didn't use the moment to defend her daughter against any accusation, because Katie hasn't actually been accused of anything by anyone connected to this case. Instead, the statement reads more like an attempt to correct the record and provide clarity, while also protecting her daughter from further public exposure. That's a meaningfully different posture than some of the other statements we've seen from families connected to this case. It's worth keeping that distinction in mind as this story continues to develop. So, does this resolve the central contradiction in this case? Not entirely, but it does shift the weight of it. Katie is now a real, named, accounted-for person, not a mystery figure whose very existence was, for a while, in question. Her family, unprompted by any lawsuit or legal pressure, has come forward publicly twice to share what she remembers, and nothing in either statement supports the friend's version that Nolan chose, on his own, to stay behind. At the same time, it's worth being honest about what this isn't. It isn't a sworn statement. It isn't a formal interview transcript. It's 2 Facebook posts from family members describing what a teenage girl told them about a chaotic afternoon, weeks after the fact. That's meaningfully different from Katie testifying directly under oath, or even giving her own on-record interview to a reporter. Until that happens, this remains an important piece of corroborating context, not a final resolution. There's also a version of this that cuts in a slightly different direction, and it's worth acknowledging honestly. Katie's account, as relayed, doesn't actually claim the friends lied outright either. It's entirely possible that Nolan genuinely intended to head back to the boat when he last spoke with Katie, and that something changed his mind, or interrupted him, in the short window between that conversation and whenever the friends say they last saw him. That would mean both accounts could be sincere and still not fully overlap, simply because they're describing slightly different moments, minutes apart, rather than the exact same instant. That possibility doesn't resolve the underlying mystery of what happened to Nolan, but it's a reminder that a contradiction between 2 honest accounts doesn't automatically mean one side is lying. Sometimes it just means nobody was watching closely enough, in the ordinary, unremarkable way people usually aren't, right up until the moment it turns out to matter enormously. If you're finding this level of detail useful, the kind that separates what's actually known from what's just being repeated, that's exactly the approach we take with every update on this case. Consider subscribing, so the next one reaches you as soon as it's out. While all of this has unfolded, the piece of evidence everyone's actually been waiting for still hasn't arrived. The independent autopsy, commissioned by the family and conducted in Washington, D.C., was originally expected to be released on Friday, July 10th. Trump has said the timeline slipped because of issues transporting Nolan's body. As of the most recent reporting available, those results still haven't been made public. The state's own autopsy remains in a similar position. Officials have said toxicology testing alone can take days or weeks, since it's typically sent out to external laboratories rather than processed in-house. The same CNN analyst mentioned earlier said he's personally waited 2 to 3 weeks for toxicology results before, in cases with no particular controversy attached to them at all. I want to be direct about something here, because misinformation has become its own significant thread in this story. Multiple credible outlets, NBC among them, have published pieces specifically about how much false information and unverified speculation has filled the silence around this case, precisely because official results have taken this long to come out. Any claim you see online stating the autopsy results are already out, especially ones describing dramatic new findings, should be treated with real skepticism until it's confirmed by a credible, named source. This pattern is worth naming clearly because it isn't unique to this case. Whenever an investigation involves genuine public interest, real emotional stakes, and a prolonged wait for official findings, that gap tends to get filled by something, whether or not real information exists to fill it. Some of what circulates is honest speculation, clearly labeled as such. Some of it is deliberately misleading, crafted to look more authoritative than it actually is, sometimes borrowing real details from the case and mixing them with invented ones to make the fabrication harder to spot. The responsible approach, the one we're going to keep taking here, is to wait for confirmation from sources that can actually be verified, rather than repeating claims simply because they're already circulating widely, or because they happen to align with a theory that feels satisfying. There's a particular danger in this case worth naming directly, because so much of the public conversation around Nolan Wells already involves race, class, and questions about how seriously local authorities took the initial disappearance. A fabricated leak about autopsy results doesn't just spread as idle gossip. It lands inside a conversation that's already emotionally charged, and it can shape how people interpret every subsequent real development, whether or not the fabrication is ever corrected. Once a false claim has been seen by a few 100,000 people, a quiet correction days later rarely reaches even a fraction of that same audience. That asymmetry is exactly why waiting for named, credible sources isn't just good practice. In a case like this one, it's close to the only thing standing between the public and a version of events built almost entirely out of guesses. Trey Easton Shepard, the friend who's already come forward publicly to explain his role in the viral confrontation video, addressed this waiting period directly in his own words. He said everybody needs to let the investigation continue and let the facts actually be shown. He said if those facts show that somebody harmed Nolan, he hopes justice is brought. And if it turns out to have been a tragic accident, one where somebody simply failed to speak up afterward, he said he still hopes justice is brought in that case too. He said the facts are the only thing that's actually going to settle any of this, and that he's waiting patiently to see them before forming any further opinion. He closed by saying simply that he knows he's lost his best friend. That's a notably different posture than a lot of the speculation surrounding this case. Shepard isn't defending his friend group as a whole, and he isn't accusing anyone either. He's asking for the same thing Nolan's own parents have asked for from the very beginning. Actual answers, rather than more theories. It's a genuinely difficult position to hold publicly, and it's worth appreciating for what it actually requires. Shepard has already put his own name and reputation on the line once, correcting the record about the viral video at real personal risk, given the death threats he and his friends have described receiving. He could have used this same platform to defend his broader friend group more forcefully, or to push back harder against the growing public suspicion surrounding them. Instead, he's explicitly leaving the door open to either outcome, that someone may have genuinely harmed Nolan, or that this may have been a tragic accident compounded by someone's failure to speak up honestly afterward. Refusing to pick a side before the facts are actually in isn't the same as having nothing to say. In a case this saturated with confident theories from every direction, that kind of deliberate restraint is, in its own way, notable. We've covered the other major threads in this case in detail before, so here's the short version for anyone catching up. Nolan's phone came back to his family with no saved Snapchat content from that entire day, checked before the 24-hour deletion window had even passed. A viral video, once believed to capture Nolan demanding his phone back, has since been explained differently by a close friend who says the voice on it is actually his own. A documented photo shows Nolan in blue shorts, contradicting an official report describing black ones, and more than 13 hours passed between the family's initial report and a formal Coast Guard search request. None of those threads have been resolved by this week's developments. They're still sitting there, unanswered, alongside everything new. There's also the question of Judge Ashley Cole's public statement, which described her son Warren's account of the timeline in detail, but notably left out any mention of the phone, the keys, the video, or the deleted messages. And there's the matter of the friends themselves, all of whom retained legal representation early on, and none of whom, according to Crump, have had any direct conversation with the family's legal team since. Every one of these threads represents its own open question. None of them moves closer to resolution just because two new developments, the FBI's involvement and Katie's family coming forward, have entered the picture this week. If anything, each new thread tends to add another layer to an already complicated picture, rather than simplifying it. Christine has shared, in recent interviews, a small, quiet detail that's easy to lose amid everything else in this case, but worth including here. She said the last time she actually saw Nolan in person was July 3rd, the night before the trip. She'd made the family salmon for dinner. He was heading out to spend the night with friends ahead of the holiday weekend. She recalled him saying simply, "Hey Mom, I'm about to go. I love you." A hug, a kiss, and he left. That's the kind of detail that doesn't fit into any theory or any timeline dispute. It's just a mother's memory of an entirely ordinary goodbye, the kind every parent has said and heard 1,000 times, that turned out, without anyone knowing it in the moment, to be the last one. It's worth sitting with that contrast for a moment. Between the granular, contested detail of the rest of this case, timestamps, boat routes, who said what to whom, and this one simple, unremarkable memory, Christine has spent the last several weeks in interviews dissecting Snapchat windows, phone location data, and the exact minute a Coast Guard call was placed. But the memory she keeps returning to isn't analytical at all. It's just her son in a doorway, saying he loved her before he left. That's often what grief actually looks like underneath a public case like this one. Not just the demand for facts and accountability, real and legitimate as that demand is, but also the quiet, private task of holding on to the last ordinary moments, before everything else about that day became extraordinary in the worst possible way. So, pulling this together, the FBI is now in contact with local investigators, expanding this case beyond a single county sheriff's office. Formal witness interviews are underway, following the standard practice of speaking to each person separately, to check whether every account of that day actually holds together under scrutiny. Katie, the young woman at the center of the original contradiction, has been publicly identified and accounted for, and her family's account, relayed secondhand, does not support the friend's version of what happened. Both autopsies remain pending, with no confirmed release date for either. And in the middle of all of it, a close friend has publicly chosen to wait for the actual facts rather than add to the speculation, while a grieving mother holds on to the memory of an ordinary goodbye that never got the chance to be followed by another one. There's a broader shape to this case worth naming as we close today. Every few days, something new arrives. A witness account, an institutional development, a personal detail from the family, and each one gets absorbed into an already sprawling public conversation about what happened to Nolan Wells. Some of what arrives genuinely moves the case forward, like Katie's family coming forward, or federal investigators now being in contact with local ones. Some of it simply adds texture, without resolving anything, like the small human detail of a final dinner and a final goodbye. And some of what circulates isn't reliable at all, and needs to be set aside entirely. Telling those three categories apart, case update, human context, and unverified noise, is exactly the discipline this story requires from anyone trying to follow it honestly. It's the discipline we're going to keep applying here, update after update, until there's an actual resolution to report. If this case matters to you, if you want the facts as they're actually confirmed, and not the version that's just loudest online, that's what this channel is for. Subscribing means you'll have the next update the moment there's something real to report, whether that's the autopsy results, a new statement, or a break in the investigation itself. We're going to keep following this case, the FBI's involvement, the witness interviews, both sets of autopsy results, and the facts as they're actually confirmed. We'll bring them to you as we get them verified, and not a moment before. That's all we have for you right now, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us, and as always, please subscribe so you don't miss the next update on this case. See you next time, everybody.